Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen here, Rav Shmuel Rashbi, with this week's 10-minute Torah. That's really 11 minutes. So, first of all, we're very excited because next week we're going to be starting the Miller course. It is a sanctioned course for those that wish to convert to Judaism or to consider converting if they're going to be Jewish as a choice or for people that maybe want a refresher in Judaism or didn't feel like they had really an adequate Hebrew school upbringing. It's a very good course. I was told by the person at American Jewish University, Deb, who says she has a master's in Hebrew letters. She's been through the course and she says she's learned some things. So apparently it's a good course. It was put together by some very good people and we're looking forward to it. And very excited about what's going on at the synagogue. You know, we're starting to grow. We're starting to get into more programs. It's looking very good. So this week we're doubling up on the portions. We have a double portion. It starts with Vayakhel and then Pekudai, which brings the book of Exodus to a close. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I know that there are some people that are seeing these videos that haven't seen them before. So why do we double up on portions? Well, it was decided by the rabbis years ago that when you're dealing with a lunar calendar as opposed to a solar calendar, you are going to be missing some days. In fact, the lunar calendar, the Hebrew calendar, is 11 days less than the solar calendar. And all the holidays that we have are meant to be seasonal holidays. Passover is not just the exodus from Egypt, but it's also a spring festival, just like Shavuot is a summer festival and Sukkot is an autumn festival. So the festivals not just have a spiritual component to it, but they also have sort of an agricultural component. And in order to keep those holidays within a certain range of the seasons, we have to add a month, an extra month, every 2 or 3 years, depending on what it is. So it works out to 7 times every 19 years. The rabbis figured this out. Also, there's a couple of months, I believe it's Kislev and Heshbon and Kislev. Some years they have 29 days, some days they have 30, depending on the year. So every couple of years, every 2 or 3 years, we add an extra month of Adar. So we have Adar Star too. So at that point, when we're going through the Torah, it's a longer process. It's an extra 4 weeks. Not only that, but there are some years when you have some Shabbatot, and some of it is just a matter of course, like Passover and Sukkot always have at least one Shabbat within the 8 days. We're out in the diaspora within the 8 days that the holiday takes place. And when we have those particular Shabbatot, we have a special Parsha reading. There's also some other holidays that if they fall on Shabbat, they have a special Shabbat reading, and Hanukkah is another one. So if you have years where Passover or Sukkot or Hanukkah start on, Hanukkah doesn't have. Sorry, it has a special moft here, and it might have be a Rosh Chodesh as well on a Shabbat. But anyway, Passover and Sukkot, if you have a year where it starts on Shabbat and it ends on Shabbat, then you're missing two regular Torah portions, which means you got to start doubling up in order to finish the Torah reading by Simchat Torah. And it's not just any old two. There's actually specific portions that are put together because of a common theme or because the sequence naturally flows. Now, in this particular portion, Vayakhel and Pekudai, which again ends the book of Exodus, we've had about 4 portions where Moses discussed building the Mishkan, getting all the materials together, discussing the various artifacts that would go into the Mishkan, which is the menorah. There's a couple of altars, a sacrificial altar, there's an incense altar. There's a table, there's a showbread rack, 6 loaves on each side for each of the tribes. There's a copper basin, a laver, with 2 spouts where the priests would wash their hands and feet before going in to officiate. There was the components of the Mishkan, the planks, the outer curtain, which was goat hair, it was kind of rough. Then you had the inner curtain, which was more fine, it was linen. You had the Holy of Holies, where only the priest went. That was sealed off. You had the priest garments. Oh, it's fun to remember all this, and you got to go from top down. Kind of like if you're a nurse and you're doing an assessment, you go top down for the systems, right? For all you nurses and doctors out there. So you had the turban, you had the headpiece, Kadosh la Hashem, holy to God. Then you had the breastplate, you had the ephod apron, you had a robe with the pomegranate, with the wool, with the little pomegranate things and the bells on the bottom. They were just wool that was shaped like a pomegranate bell, around the circumference of the robe. You had an apron. So you had all these different things that were done. So what Vayakhel and Pekudai does, it basically reiterates. It says, okay, so the people brought, they were very generous. They brought their gold earrings. They brought the nose rings was a big thing in that day. They had silver. They had other gold that they brought, as a basis of the materials. They also had, by the way, can't neglect to mention the Ark, where the Ten Commandments went in, and also the pieces of the first Ten Commandments, it said, also went into the Ark. So in a sense, you had two sets of Ten Commandments in there, the broken pieces of the first one, and then the second one, which was intact. Okay, so I do that sometimes, folks. I jump around. So now, after the folks brought the materials, it said that Bezalel and Aholiab, these were two men who were, think of them as the master contractors. Now, Bezalel was from the tribe of Judah, and he was the grandson of Hur. And we remember that Hur was Moses and Aaron's brother-in-law, married to Miriam. When the mob tried to attack or whatever they were doing, they went and they were having an uprising because Moses, they thought, was a day late in coming back down from Mount Sinai, and they felt leaderless out there in the desert. Or so they thought. Some people thought it was the Erev Rav, the rabble from Egypt, that accompanied, that used the chaos to escape, that really kind of instigated all that. When Hur put up a fight, he tried to suppress them, and he was killed for that. And Aaron, of course, looked around and thought, "Wow, I better curtail this until Moses gets back." So he accommodated them by doing the golden calf. So that was Bezalel's grandfather, and he was from the tribe of Judah. Aholiab was the master craftsman that did the weaving. So Bezalel did the craft. He made the planks and the artifacts, whereas Aholiab from the tribe of Dan was the one that oversaw the making of the clothing. And the Torah makes a distinction that Bezalel from the tribe of Judah, that was the most populous tribe. Dan was the smallest tribe. So they used the contrast that you had somebody from the smallest tribe, someone from the largest tribe, and that it really didn't matter. Everybody was kind of equal, and everybody had a share in constructing the Mishkan. So they reviewed that it was done. They also reviewed the Shabbat. Now, Shabbat is mentioned many times over the course of the last two or three portions, that you were supposed to cease and desist from working, and this was a day of rest. We had a very interesting conversation in our Torah study about what does Shabbat mean to you. It's a day to get away from the material, from the grind, from the rat race, if you will, and just sit back and just be with Hashem and study Hashem's laws, and it kind of tells you why we're all doing this. That's what really Torah is all about, and that's the day that's set aside for that. And Moses again makes the distinction from God, of course, that no work is to be done on Shabbat. And it's done in the context of the Mishkan too, to kind of say, well, yeah, it's great that we're working on it, but you need to take that day off. And in fact, the 39 malachot, these are the little tasks. I interpret the word avodah as work. I interpret the word malacha, which are works, or I interpret that as tasks. These are the things the 39 things that they did in order to construct. And the sages looked at that and said, oh, okay, so if God said don't do these 39 things with the Mishkan, then that would go out to regular life. These are things that you don't do on Shabbat, and there's a whole list of them. So it reiterates that, reiterates the fact that they did it. And it's interesting that once we were commanded to do it, now we have the two portions that say it was done. So, in other words, it's kind of like God's intention. And this is where intention is so important in the Talmud. What you want to do is almost maybe even more important than actually what you do. So the point is that it was God's desire, God's intention to have his dwelling place, and we fulfilled that intention. And maybe this is, think about this, maybe this is the way God works. We always talk about, well, it's God's plan when something happens, either good or bad, but maybe here it is. Here's the basis of that. The fact that it was God's intention that this happened, we did it. That's what Tikkun Olam is, folks. We are here on this earth to do the physical work of Hashem. Think of that. Anyway, we will see you at services. For those of you taking the Miller course, excited to have you join me. It's going to be fun. I'm excited to join you, and looking forward to more to come. Shabbat Shalom.